Look at this. Millions of people across the country marching as we speak against the policies of President Trump. This is Boston. Look at that.
Hello. This is the Dollemore Daily. My name is Garrison Hayes, guest host, filling in for Jesse Dollemore while he is away in Japan. On Saturday, millions of Americans took to the streets to peacefully protest Donald Trump and show their displeasure for his administration. There were huge crowds full of joy and singing and First Amendment expressions, which is what America is all about, I'd say. You had people of all ages, all stripes, all walks of life. You know, the leftists and the moderates and the Democrats and even a few traditional Republicans all showed up for the No King's Day protests, including this veteran, it's on the screen now, who reported on the horrors of the concentration camps during World War II, a true hero who knows what it means to fight against fascists and tyrants. But this is how President Donald J. Trump described him and millions of others.
Over the weekend, the No King's protests.
I think it's a joke. I looked at the people. They're not representative of this country. And I looked at all the brand new signs paid for, I guess it was paid for by Soros and other radical left lunatics. It looks like it was. We're checking it out. The demonstrations were very small, very ineffective, and the people were whacked out. When you look at those people, those are not representative of the people of our country.
Mr. President, besides San Francisco...
By the way, I'm not a king. I'm not a king. I work my ass off to make our country great. That's all it is. I'm not a king at all.
What's crazy about that whole thing with Donald Trump is that this isn't even the worst thing that he did this weekend. In a disgusting, classless, low-life move, the President of the United States of America posted an AI video of himself desecrating the citizens of this country. Watch this.
I think it's a joke. I looked at the people. They're not representative of this country. And I looked at all the brand new signs paid for, I guess it was paid for by Soros and other radical left lunatics. It looks like it was. We're checking it out. The demonstrations were very small, very ineffective.
The president's big answer to millions of people peacefully protesting, saying no kings, was to post an AI fantasy of himself flying over a crowd and strafing the citizens of this country with feces from a jet that literally says King Trump. The metaphor, it's almost too on the nose. It tells you everything you need to know about this man and the people who have sold their souls, it seems, to make excuses for his every move. This is inexcusable. This is one of those things where our news cycle is so fast and it just turns over so quickly that we are going to completely forget about this in about 5 days, maybe sooner. It may be that I'm reminding you that this happened with this video here on Monday. It may be that you're seeing this now and you're like, oh yeah, that did happen. When was that again? Was that a couple months ago? No. It was Saturday. The news moves so quickly that we are going to eventually move on from this. But in a normal time, with a normal person leading our country, this would be an unpardonable offense. How can you lead a country, these United States of America, as they are called, as some preachers say, these yet to be United States of America? Shout out to Freddie Haymes. How can you lead this country and do something that despicable? You have the head of state dumping bowels on the people he's been elected to serve. Nothing says, I hate America, like fantasizing about literally defecating on your fellow countrymen, including, as you see on the screen, the very popular online creator, Harry Sisson, a very vocal young critic of Trump and the Republican Party. I actually think it's worth reminding you of how these people were describing the No Kings protests, the days leading up to them, just before they happened. Watch this clip.
Now, tomorrow, the Democrat leaders are going to join for a big party out on the National Mall. They're going to descend on our Capitol for their much-anticipated so-called No Kings rally. We refer to it by its more accurate description, the Hate America rally, okay? And I'm not sure how anybody can refute that. If you think about what's going to happen here tomorrow, you're going to bring together the Marxists, the socialists, the Antifa advocates, the anarchists, and the pro-Hamas wing of the far-left Democrat Party. That is the modern Democratic Party. That's where they've gone. And the Hate America rally is the common theme among all those groups.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says these are the Marxists and the anarchists and the socialists and the Antifa advocates, the people who, quote unquote, hate America. Because nothing speaks to the confidence that you have that you are on the right side of the issues, like smearing millions of your own citizens for using their First Amendment rights. These are the people who seem to really hate America. If we're just being very honest, it seems like these people actually kind of hate America. They hate our freedoms. They hate our laws. It seems that they hate our diversity. It seems that they hate our values. They hate that we are a democracy. They hate decorum, it seems, and I just don't understand it. If people like Trump and Speaker Johnson hate it here so much, why don't they just leave? If they want to live in a fascist country, why don't they just go to one of the other places that at the very least doesn't pretend to be something else? I want you to take a listen to the conversation that my colleague Anna over at Mother Jones had with a protester at the No Kings rally in San Francisco. I think they really hit the nail on the head and kind of perfectly captured why so many people took to the streets on Saturday and declared no kings. Watch this.
I mean, we are Antifa. It's anti-fascist, Antifa, you know? I don't believe in fascism. We fought fascism years ago and we're gonna fight it again. So I work in a drag bar, and actually a couple of the members of the community have been taken by ICE. It's literally friends and family and stuff like that that are being like taken from us. And they're not criminals or anything like that. They're incredible, wonderful people. I can't stand to see like the hatred of different communities and stuff like that. It's not right, you know? America has always been diverse.
Well said. Well said. Okay, I think I'm going to call it there. My name is Garrison Hayes. I am guest hosting here for Jesse Dollemore here at the Dollemore Daily while he's away on vacation in Japan. I hope he is enjoying himself, him and Brittany Page. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. And listen, I'd love it if you came over to subscribe to my channel. I'm getting really, really close to 150,000 subscribers, which is kind of a big milestone. So if you could come over and help me kind of get over that hump, I greatly appreciate it. Make sure you follow Jesse on all platforms at Dollemore. That's on Blue Sky and on Threads and on X or Twitter, on Facebook, on everything, Instagram, TikTok. Go give him a follow. And while you're at it, I'm on those platforms as well. You can find a link to my pages by going down to my channel and clicking the link in the bio. But yes, I'll see you over there. Listen, this is fun. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, peace.
The institution of slavery is not inherently evil. I know. Some of you guys are upset by that. Some of you guys are saying, I've been saying that for years.
This is the Dollemore Daily. My name is Garrison Hayes, guest hosting here on the channel this week. Listen, this one bothered me. This one like genuinely annoyed me over the weekend. Like we've looped back around to the Christians defending the institution of slavery part of Christian history. And it's bothering me. Christian nationalist Joshua Haymes, he's a commentator, defended slavery as an institution in a viral video that I need you to see. Take a look.
The institution of slavery is not inherently evil. I know. Some of you guys are upset by that. Some of you guys are saying, I've been saying that for years. Okay, I'll take it a step further. It is not inherently evil to own another human being. I know, just wait. Some of you guys are really upset, but let's talk through this because it is very important that every Christian affirm what I just said. And not only should they affirm it, every Christian in today's society should be able to defend what I just said, okay? Every Christian should be able to defend it. Big evangelicalism has been getting this wrong for years, basically since the Genesis, since the advent of Big Eva. They haven't had a good answer for the slavery issue. All right, Christians in America have been led astray on this topic. They've been led to believe things that the Bible doesn't teach. And when we go beyond the Bible, there are dire consequences.
Now this is obviously racist, and I'm going to tell you why it's racist, but I'm also going to engage with this in good faith, easier said than done. I want to tell you what his argument is, and then I'll explain to you why his position is not only wrong, it is also obviously racist. Now, this clip is a part of a larger video that obviously we're not going to take the time to comb through this entire video. He actually summarized his position in his own words in a post on X that I'm going to show you right now. Joshua Haymes, in defending his position that slavery is not inherently evil or wrong, he wrote this as a defense of his position. He says, it is not inherently sinful for one image bearer to own another. Insane. Slavery as an institution, he says, is not inherently evil. Insane. That being said, man stealing is inherently sinful and clearly condemned of the law of God. Thus, any form of slavery that includes man stealing is evil. Why is this important, he asks. We've been asking the same thing, but here we are. Because to posit that all forms of slavery are inherently evil is to accuse God, he says, of helping institute and regulate an evil system for the nation of Israel in the Old Testament. He goes on, God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. If owning another person is inherently evil today, then it was inherently evil in ancient Israel, he says, and thus you can accuse God of engaging in evil. What a doozy. Now, I'm going to debunk this stuff. I'm going to kind of take it a few points at a time. There really aren't that many points being made. It's kind of all built on what I believe to be a house of cards. But I'm going to debunk it. And I'll even use a couple of scriptures here or there to do it. So let's start with the foundational claim. The thing undergirding his entire position, his entire argument, is that, to quote, to posit that all forms of slavery are inherently evil is to accuse God, he says, of helping institute and regulate an evil system. The foundational assumption that he is making here is that God endorsed the actions of biblical Israel. That if Israel did it, God endorsed it. Brother, have you ever read the Bible? The Bible is like 90% God sending messengers to tell his followers that they are messing up, that they aren't carrying out his will. The last third of the Old Testament, he mentions the Old Covenant. The last third of the Old Covenant, of the Old Testament, is just diss track after diss track from the prophets, just writing songs, writing entire volumes about how God's people are doing stuff that God didn't like. I need you to read the book. I need you to read Jeremiah. I need you to read Lamentations. I need you to read Micah, an incredibly popular text in Micah chapter 6, verse 8. Let's do the King James Version for your benefit. He hath shown thee, O man, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of thee but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. If you were to go back and read that text, what Micah is saying is that despite all the sacrifices and despite all of the burnt offerings and all the symbolic and performative gestures that the people of God in the Bible were trying to carry out to appease God. We're going to do these symbols and we'll sing songs and we'll make sacrifices. Micah said, no. God's already shown you what he wants from you. And it is for you to do justly, to stop carrying out injustice against marginalized people. If you were to go back and read the prophets of the Old Testament, ironically, God is constantly railing against the children of Israel for its treatment of marginalized people. Read the book. This is actually how I know most Christians don't read the Bible. They may read texts. They may read a devotion here or there. They may even read texts or devotions regularly. They may listen to a lot of sermons. But there is an embarrassingly thin, weak, elementary understanding of the scripture as a whole. It's a story about people in process, moving from one primitive idea to the next and trying to be ushered, discipled, as we might say, into a fuller, more compassionate ethic that culminates in so many ways with the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. I'm trying to talk to Christians in the terms that they understand. So, you know what I mean? I'm trying to kind of cut through with the language that they claim to believe in. Yeah. That's the story of Scripture, a story of people in progress. And God's commitment, this needs to be said, God's commitment to those people in process has nothing to do with an endorsement. It has everything to do with his covenant commitment to them. That's the point. The point is not an endorsement. The point is that they were doing things that he completely despised and said so often, and yet he remained committed to them. This is why the scriptures say, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It is a commitment despite. That's the point. That's the point. Not an endorsement. But I think many white Christian nationalists are blinded by their own priors. What I mean by that is that they have these ideas that pre-exist, these conclusions, and then they kind of force and manipulate and shrink the Bible to fit those ideas that already exist, those conclusions that they'd already come to. You know, I said that this was racist for a reason. And it comes down, in my opinion, to the simple fact that this person would not defend other institutions or activities that we consider inherently evil. He would not, I presume, defend child sexual exploitation, despite the Bible, the cultural context, the historical record, even texts in the scriptures suggest that they were marrying little girls off to grown men. I assume you wouldn't defend that. That is inherently evil. Perhaps I shouldn't make this assumption. Maybe that's something that you defend. But what I've noticed with so many Christians is that so many of people in this particular faith tradition, they're comfortable with the intellectual, theological exercise of reasoning through all of the complexities of things like institutional slavery or the humanity of non-white straight men. And they put it in this context of a biblical discussion and a theological discussion. Like, you know, you're comfortable with that precisely because of how you visualize yourself as the oppressor and not as the oppressed, as the powerful and not the powerless. How do I know? I'll show you. He says it right here in this clip. Watch this.
I just want to clarify, just so it's just crystal clear. I am not saying that slavery was a positive good for society. I am not saying that we should bring it back. I am very happy that white Christians abolished slavery in the West and basically across the entire world, or most of it.
Did you hear it? Did you hear him visualize the parties involved in this story as whites in the position of power to abolish slavery? white Christians in the position to abolish slavery. The historical record is shaky at best on that claim. And non-white people in the position of slave, of being powerless. It is precisely this visualization that makes his entire analysis possible. Do we really think, let's think critically here for a second, do we really think that white Christian nationalist men are turning their rights and their freedom into an intellectual theological exercise where in the end, the conclusion that one might come to after going through the exercise of on the rights of white Christian men, they come to the conclusion that God approves their subjugation? Do you think we're doing that? I've not seen it. Show me. Show me the time where white Christian nationalist men, straight men, are turning their rights and their freedom into an intellectual exercise where in the end God approves of their subjugation. I think the overarching work of whiteness and white supremacy over the course of hundreds of years and generations and generations and generations of white Christians is what creates the conditions that allow him to come to these conclusions, to hold the presupposition that this is a topic worth debating. There is a deep social encoding that allows him to conclude that this is worth a ponder, that it is simply something to be negotiated theologically as opposed to being the utter moral and intellectual failure that it is. Your ancestors failed to develop a hermeneutic worth anything. They failed to read the scripture with any consistency, with any value, bereft of even an ounce of depth. And you just willingly, uncritically, pick it back up to serve your white supremacist movement's racist agenda. Pathetic. But I do want to take seriously the fact that this guy is open to being enslaved on biblical grounds, of course. He looks, quite frankly, very weak. So a buyer would no doubt need to make an initial investment in bulking him up and getting him fit for labor in the fields. So that's something that a buyer would need to, at the very least, think about. I'm not especially versed in the slave market, but I do think that that may drive down his market value among the enslavers. Those of us who are anti-slavery, we just don't know a lot about that. But the enslavers would be able to weigh in. If you are one of those, please weigh in the comments. I'm going to call it there. I'm Garrison Hayes, guest hosting for my friend Jesse Dollemore while he's away. Huge shout out to Jesse and to everyone you've been commenting. You guys are great. Listen, make sure you leave a comment on this one down in the comments. I'm really interested in what you have to say about this one in particular. Is slavery, not that bad? As Christians, should we be more pro-slavery? God was pro-slavery. He wasn't. Let me just say that. Okay. Like the video. If you aren't subscribed, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Go ahead, just click it. Boom. And then right over there, click it. Boom. Like. I'd love for you to come over and check out my channel. There's a link to my channel below. I'm really excited for you guys to come over and see the work that I've been doing. It's been really, really great hanging out with you. That's it for this one. Follow Jesse on all platforms at Dollemore. You can find a link to all the different platforms I'm on. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and all the other ones. You can find a link to that on my channel. So click the link to my channel, give me a subscription, like this video. That's it for this. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
We look forward to seeing what you do with your second chance.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And now you said you could get Botox now that you're out.
I can.
Okay. Something you can't do in prison.
You can't.
Thank you.
Disgraced former Congressman George Santos is back, baby, and ready for Botox. This is the Dollemore Daily. I'm Garrison Hayes, guest hosting for Jesse while he's on vacation. And over the weekend, George Santos, who is easily one of the most notorious scammers and liars to reach elected office, to reach the halls of Congress ever, and that's saying a lot. That's saying something. He went on a welcome home press tour to thank Donald Trump for commuting his sentence after serving only about 84 days of a 7-year prison term for wire fraud and identity theft. Do you remember when George Santos said, "I'm Jewish"? And then when people kind of like dug into it, he went back and said, "Oh, no. I didn't say I was Jewish. I said I was Jew-ish." That's crazy. Fox News clip right here.
Thank you so much for joining us on the couch. So let's just, first of all, congratulations on getting out.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you to President Trump for clemency and for having such an amazing will for second chances. I feel like it's justice served in the sense of I've made some poor choices in my life, but
to say the least, huh? I've made some poor Yeah, that's true. Actually, we'll talk a little bit about some of the crimes he's accused, the crimes he pled guilty to committing. We'll talk about that in a bit. Let's keep watching.
nothing would warrant a insane, arbitrary sentence. But on top of that, a sentence that no one else would have gotten.
Now, I want to just pause here because listen to the kind of like rhetorical things that he's doing here. He says, no one would have gotten this kind of insane, arbitrary sentence that I got. But some of the crimes he committed carry mandatory minimums. The aggravated identity theft is a part of what actually made the sentence what it was. If you didn't do that particular crime, you would not have faced that specific amount of time.
A treatment that no one else would have gotten, 41 days in isolation in the SHU. And to add insult to injury, I had two co-defendants, one who got probation, one who was me, who got 7 years, and the other one who's still in the same facility today, suffering the same thing. Sam Mealy is still sitting in there, which I still think it's a great injustice.
Now, I can agree with George Santos on that front. I can totally agree with him that it is a great injustice that he's walking free and one of his co-conspirators are, they're still in prison. You know what I mean? I think like, you know, he's like, hey, this is so arbitrary and no one would have gotten these times. And maybe that's true. Maybe they were making an example out of George Santos. I can't say. What I can say is, did you or did you not commit the crime, my guy?
All non-violent first-time offenders with no criminal background, and we're being thrown in this harsh environment with absolutely nothing. So when I spoke to President Trump yesterday, I told him my commitment would be to prison reform. I told him my commitment would be to fighting to help Sam Mealy and so many other people who are being absolutely drowned with this arbitrary sentencing style of judges who are trying to circumvent the First Step Act.
You know, maybe one of the silver linings in all of this stuff is that, you know, Trump pardons or grants clemency to people, and then they come out of prison and they're like, whoa, prison in America sucks. That's crazy. Wait, we've been doing this to people? Wait, hold on. People have to like spend the entirety of their lives in there? It's just like a revolving door of folks who just like constantly go through this system and are experiencing quite literally the worst conditions imaginable sometimes. That's crazy. We've got to reform this. Like, if there's any silver lining in the fact that Trump will grant clemency or pardon people, and kind of I think one of the conditions of doing that is that you got to come out and talk about it. If there's anything that you can say that might be good here, it's that folks come out and they more or less decry the terrible conditions of the American carceral prison system. But lest we forget, George Santos pleaded guilty to wire fraud and identity theft. He did the crimes. He said he did the crimes. And if he wasn't a famous ally of Donald Trump, a media darling, for one reason, for better or for worse, if he wasn't that, he'd still be doing the time. How do I know? How do you know that? Well, Trump said so himself in a Truth Social post. Trump more or less said the quiet part out loud. I want to read it to you. On Truth Social, Donald Trump posted this. He said, George Santos was somewhat of a rogue. Somewhat, huh? But there are many rogues throughout our country, perhaps including you, Mr. President. all this stuff. He goes on for a bit. He says that the sentence was severe, to be sent to prison for 7 years, and he thought that was excessive. Okay, fine. The part that I really want to point out to you, he says this: at least Santos had the courage, conviction, and intelligence to always vote Republican. If a TV writer wrote this into a script and gave it to the network head and said, "This is what I want to make," I think they'd be like, "Hey guys, this is just a little on the nose. It's just a little too much. Can we tone it down a little bit? Let's make it more realistic." George Santos admitted to lying to Congress, stealing from campaign donors, using funds for personal use. In fact, the House Ethics Committee documented some of that personal usage. Botox sessions flagged on campaign debit cards. Brother, get it together. Designer items, Hermes, come on, Sephora, face, beat to the gods. And perhaps the funniest ones, smaller purchases on OnlyFans. A gooner. Okay, Hakeem Jeffries wasn't happy about Trump granting clemency to a person he helped to expel from Congress. He had this to say where he really turned things back to the point. He kind of like took this moment. Yes, George Santos is crazy and certainly kind of like red meat for the media. We love to talk about him. But Hakeem Jeffries kept the main thing. Watch this.
That's the reality. Now, listen, there have been votes on the Affordable Care Act tax credits in both the House and the Senate throughout the year. And Republicans have repeatedly voted against extending those tax credits because they care more about George Santos and freeing him than they do about providing health care to everyday Americans. That's the unfortunate reality that we confront.
Listen, he has a point. We are in the third longest government shutdown in U.S. history, and Trump is prioritizing this, his political allies, the people who scratch that egotistical itch. I think I'm going to call it there. Tell me what you think. I'm Garrison Hayes, guest hosting here for Jesse Dollemore. Make sure you like this video and you subscribe to this channel. This is a great channel, and if you aren't already subscribed, you should subscribe. And then come over and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it if you did. I'm getting really close to a milestone, and you could maybe help me cross it. I think you'll like what I'm doing over there, especially if you like what I'm doing over here. Love to know what you think down in the comments. Be sure to follow Jesse on all platforms at Dollemore on Blue Sky and Twitter and Threads and Instagram and TikTok and everywhere else. He's everywhere at Dollemore. Follow him there. And you can find links to my social media platforms on my channel as well. So make sure you click that link. Come on over, check me out. As always, appreciate you being here. Until next time, peace.
They make tremendous amounts of cocaine, and they send it all over the world, and they destroy families. No, Colombia is out of control, and now they have the worst president they've ever had. He's a lunatic who's got a lot of problems, mental problems.
This is the Dollemore Daily. I'm Garrison Hayes, filling in, guest hosting for my good friend, Jesse. So for the last few months, the U.S. has been carrying out multiple lethal strikes on smaller boats, smaller vessels in the Caribbean. These vessels, they say, have been running drugs, and they're linking them to Colombia's National Liberation Army and other drug-running operations. Now, the death toll, the estimates of the death toll is somewhere between 20 and 40, depending upon where you get your news. But more than anything, Colombia's president has had enough. Not only has the Trump administration been a bit clammy, they've released scarce, virtually no public evidence of their claim that these boats were bringing drugs to the United States. There's also a lot of doubt about whether or not carrying out these kinds of attacks, these kinds of military airstrikes in international waters. There's a ton of doubt about whether or not this is even legal. Alvin Halsey, the 4-star Navy admiral overseeing the military's strikes against boats in this particular region in the Caribbean, abruptly retired last week in what was seen by many people as a huge red flag, as an indicator that something is awry here. So what happened is my question to the peaceful, no new wars president. Under almost any other conditions, this would be considered an act of war. If a U.S. citizen were to hop on a boat and they were to be carrying, let's say the claims are true, they were actually carrying drugs from the United States to Haiti or to the Bahamas, and the Bahamas carried out, or Haiti carried out, an airstrike that killed U.S. citizens, even if they were doing something quote unquote wrong, we'd have an issue with that, I think. I think there is blood on the hands of the folks calling in these airstrikes. There is a kind of bloodthirstiness, in fact, a love for militarism, for strikes and bombs and demonstrations of force and military parades. They really are into that in this second term of the Trump administration, and it is very concerning. The kind of constant discourse about utilizing the military against our foreign adversaries, but also against people here at home, raises some very serious concerns for me, and I think for others. Even folks in Trump's own party are questioning the legality of these strikes. Senator Rand Paul, of all people, a close ally of President Trump, was asked on Meet the Press if he thought these strikes were legal. And he said no. I want you to watch this clip.
Venezuela, obviously you've been very focused on this. President Trump has authorized military strikes against suspected drug boats in the Caribbean. As you know, so far more than 20 people, Senator, have been killed in 6 different strikes. Do you believe that these strikes against these suspected drug boats are legal?
No, they go against all of our tradition. You know, when you kill someone, you should know, if you're not at war, not in a declared war, you really need to know someone's name, at least. You have to accuse them of something. You have to present evidence. So all of these people have been blown up without us knowing their name, without any evidence of a crime. And for decades, if not centuries, when you stop people at sea in international waters or in your own waters, you announce that you're going to board the ship and you're looking for contraband, smuggling, or drugs. This happens every day off of Miami, but we know from Coast Guard statistics that about 25% of the time the Coast Guard boards a ship, there are no drugs.
I want you to take in what he just said there. First and foremost, he's saying that usually when we carry out strikes on our enemies, we typically know the crime that they are alleged to have committed, and we know their names. And what Senator Rand Paul is saying is that in this case, we don't have any of that information. We don't know what crime they are alleged to have committed. And then on top of that, the likelihood that these people may or may not be innocent is actually relatively high, higher than it should be if you're going to be carrying out lethal force, lethal airstrikes on these individuals. This is unbelievable. He's saying this is a crime. When asked if this was legal, he literally opened his remarks by saying, no, it's not legal. Keep watching.
So if our policy now is to blow up every ship we suspect or accuse of drug running, that would be a bizarre world in which 25% of the people might be innocent.
25% of the people might be innocent. This is important because, as I'll show you in just a few moments, the United States government is being accused of killing innocent people.
The other thing about these speedboats is they're 2,000 miles away from us. If they have drugs, they're probably peddling drugs to one of the islands of Trinidad or Tobago off of Venezuela. The idea that they're coming here is like, it's a huge assumption.
It's a huge, I mean, I hate to just repeat what he's saying, but I do want to, I'm trying to highlight the fact that this is actually a bomb. This should be a bombshell revelation. This should actually concern so many people. This is what could easily be the thing that lands Trump or Pete Hegseth in front of the International Criminal Court. what they're doing here in the Caribbean is astonishing.
And really, shouldn't you have to present some proof? It is the difference between war and peace. In war, though, you don't ask people's name. But if they want all-out war where we kill anybody and everybody that is in the country of Venezuela or coming out, that has to have a declaration of war. It's something that is not pretty, very expensive, and I'm not in favor of declaring war on Venezuela, but the Congress should vote. The president shouldn't do this by himself.
Congress should vote. The president shouldn't do this by himself. But I'm wondering if Rand Paul, though he just gave forceful remarks, I believe, on Meet the Press, something that he should absolutely be given credit for. I'm wondering if he and other Republicans in Congress are willing to hold the president accountable for his actions. Now, to make matters worse, Colombia's president accused the U.S. of murder and violation of sovereignty laws, saying that at least one of the people killed by the U.S. was a civilian from Colombia, lifelong fisherman, fishing in a boat that was in Colombian waters. Same is being said of a fisherman from Trinidad. Now, instead of responding to the substance of the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, instead of responding to his claims, Trump chose to attack him personally. It's what he does. When he doesn't have any other response, he attacks people personally. He actually posted this to Truth Social, and I want to show you. I want to read it to you. Okay, and so again, instead of responding to the substance of what Colombia's president claims against the United States, President Donald J. Trump opens up his post here on Truth Social by calling President Gustavo Petro of Colombia an illegal drug leader, strongly encouraging the massive production of drugs in big and small fields all over Colombia. He goes on to say that any and all aid to Colombia would be cut off. When asked about the Colombian president's accusations, President Trump doubled down on the personal attacks without addressing, again, the substance of the accusation. I don't know why I expect so much of our president, but I expect for if there is a substantive accusation being made, that you will respond substantively to said accusation. Instead, he did this. Watch this clip.
Against drugs. And in fact, even when they had better presidents than they have right now, that's how they're making a lot of money, drugs. I used to complain about it when they had a very nice president, but he wasn't doing it. It was all talk. They are a drug manufacturing machine, Colombia, and we're not going to be part of it. So we're going to drop all money that we're giving to them. It has nothing to do with them stopping drug production. And you look at the fields are loaded up with drugs, and they refine the drugs, and they make tremendous amounts of cocaine, and they send it all over the world, and they destroy families. No, Colombia is out of control, and now they have the worst president they've ever had. He's a lunatic who's got a lot of problems, mental problems.
A lunatic with a lot of problems, mental problems. Well, there you have it. I actually have no comment on whether or not Colombia is producing drugs, cocaine, whatever. I don't know. I just don't know. What I do know is what the United States is doing, and we need to answer for that. I'm going to call it there. Tell me what you think down in the comments. Is this an issue? Is this a big deal? I'm paying close attention to it. I hope you are as well. My name is Garrison Hayes. I'm guest hosting here for Jesse Dollemore here at the Dollemore Daily. You can find a link to my channel down in the comments below in the description. Before you get there, you'll run into the subscribe button. Click that if you aren't already subscribed to this channel. Click that like button. It really does make a difference. And of course, come over and subscribe to my channel as well. I'm getting close to a big milestone here, so I could really use your help to achieve it. As always, I'm grateful that you are here and watching. If you want to keep up with what Jesse is doing on other platforms, you can find him on all social media platforms at Dollemore, and you can find links to my social media platforms at the link in my channel. So come check me out. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.